What is meant to be a healing, relaxing, and rejuvenating walk through Devon turns lethal, which sets retired police detective Rick Chasen back to work. Join us as we chat with author Nicholas George about a deadly walk in Devon. Welcome to Blackbird Writers Presents Author Interviews. I'm Sharon Lynn, and welcome to you, Nick.
Thank you, Sharon. It's great to be here.
I'm so glad you could make it. We talked a little bit about this at Left Coast Crime when we were on a panel together. Tell us about your background and how you got started writing.
Right. Well, I started writing when I was when I was probably about 6 or 7 years old because I had an older sister who was in high school or beginning high school, I think, and she got a typewriter to help her with doing her homework. And I quickly hijacked that typewriter. I thought I was fascinated with it, and I started teaching myself how to type words. And I just I was infatuated with it, and I still type that way. I still type very hunt and peck way that I taught myself back when I was 7 or 8. Anyway, I've always liked to write, and when I went to college, I majored in journalism. I wanted to be a newspaper reporter, like a Woodward and Bernstein, set the world on fire kind of reporter. And then when I became a reporter, it turned out not to be quite that glamorous and and not that well remunerative. That would be the word. So I took advantage of an opportunity and I got into, I guess you would call public relations, corporate communications. I ended up working for a couple of large corporations directly and also indirectly through consulting firms throughout my career, and managing communication programs involved a lot of writing, but not the kind of writing I normally want to do. It was writing annual reports and explaining benefit plans to employees and that kind of thing. But it was, it was a good career, and I retired a few years ago. And I thought, well, I'm going to go back to what I really wanted to do, which was write fiction and write novels. So I jumped into that, and it was tackling a rather complex literary novel that wasn't quite coming around the way I wanted it to. When I was I happened to be on a group walk in Devon, England. I love to walk. Walking is my other than writing. Walking is my passion, and one of the places I love to walk is England. I don't know why. I'm an Anglophile, probably from listening to the Beatles and all those British groups back in the 60s.
I'm right there with you.
And I don't know if that's what did it or what, but anyway, I love going to England. I love the culture there. I love the people. I love the food, actually, and the beer. And so I was on a group walk in Devon and mentioned that I was a writer. And a lot of the other people on the walk were readers, and they and readers of mysteries. So one of them just said, Nick, you should write a mystery that takes place on one of these walks. And I think she was kidding, kind of laughed. But I thought about it, and I got back home, and I was kind of stuck on the novel I was writing, and so I thought, I've mystery writing. I love mysteries. Let me take a crack at this. So I came up with a plot, and I used the walk that I had just been on as the setting for this. So I used some of the characters. I changed their names, of course, but the places. And so it was based on an actual experience that I had just had. And I hammered out the first draft in about 5 weeks. And I enjoyed it. It was fun. And I thought, I really like this. And but I knew the book was far from over, far from finished. I was in a couple of writing groups, and so I workshopped the book chapter by chapter. I got a lot of good feedback. I went through 3 more drafts, I think, of it. And then I hired an editor, in a British editor, just to make sure that I was getting the British
Right.
flavor of the thing right. And that was very nice. And then I wrote 2 more in addition to that. I wrote the 2 sequels. But then I also then went through the process of trying to get an agent and querying all of that, and that's sort of the work part of writing that you have to do.
That's not the
And
fun part.
yeah, it's a real crapshoot in a way,
Yeah.
but I did it. I got a great agent, and she was able to get a deal for me. So the first book, which is Deadly Walk in Devon, That came out this last March, and I think I was on the panel with you just a couple of weeks after it came out, and it's been a great experience. I've just enjoyed it. I've had doing talks like this and doing conferences like Left Coast Crime where we were appeared, and a number of other things. It's just been fun. It's just is not what I was expecting to have happen at this time of my life, but it's kind of a fun thing. And so where it's going to go, I don't know. I do know the two more books are coming out. The next one will be out in next February, and it's also they all take place on English walks. They're called the Walk Through England Mystery Series, and so the next one is called A Lethal Walk in Lakeland, which is the Lake District, and then the third in the series is called A Crushing Walk in Cornwall. So you can sort of see the theme developing there. Anyway, that brings us up to date.
Well, that is awesome. So you touched on a couple of things here that I kind of want to explore a little bit further. And one of those is that you have done a walking tour. And in the book, it's called The Wanderers, is the tour company. So is that based on the tour company you used?
Yes, it is.
Give them a little plug, or
I changed the name. The company that organized the tours was called the Wayfarers.
Okay.
And so I changed it to Wanderers, and hoping nobody was going to sue me. They haven't yet, but they when COVID hit, they kind of hit as many companies, particularly those involved with travel. They hit a rough patch, and they kind of closed down for a couple of years. They're back now, but they have a different. It's different. It used to be the Wayfarers. Now it's the Wayfarers something else, but it's sort of back. But yeah, same type of company.
Well, I did a contours walk through the Cotswolds, which is
Yes.
what that book, trying to do it in reverse, is based on, and they do they just pick up all of your luggage and take it to the next town for you, so you can just walk with a little backpack, and that was really great.
The way did it too. I mean, you walked with a little pack on your back, but then they would transport all your luggage to the next inn. And I did a walk once in the Lake District many years ago on my own, but I coordinated it through an online group which arranged to have what they call a Sherpa service that transports your luggage. And so that made it easy, but I had to study the map and make sure I wasn't going to get lost, which that's why I like a group walk, because you have a guide who can, lead you in the right direction and keep you from turning the wrong way.
Yeah. The contours walk was just, they just had hotel to hotel, and then it's like, off you go. And yeah, I would be dead in the woods if it weren't for my husband, who can actually read a map and had a GPS. I'm like, isn't it that way? No.
I know.
Which is also how I drive, by the way. All right, so the Wayfarers is the Wanderers, and then you also said group tour. You like to have everybody around and get that feedback from the tour leader. So this takes us to Ronald Gretz, who is rich, demanding, loud, rude, entitled. I wanted to kill him off. So is he based on anybody that you actually, again, who will remain nameless, encountered?
No, there wasn't certainly anybody on the walk that I took who was like that, but I wanted to have I wanted to have not necessarily a villain, but somebody who was sort of unpleasant. So I had to kind of invent him. I mean, he probably was based on people I've known through the years, but nobody was on the walk like that. Generally on these walks, you get people who are very, very like-minded. They like to travel, they like to see new things, they like to be on foot when they see them. So they're generally pretty agreeable people. They're not usually complaining or doing anything like that.
Yeah, I've been on a couple of small van tours, and yeah, everybody's always just lovely. So good to know. All right, so let's just I actually want this one. So when Chasen, when he gets there to Devon, there's another woman Billy, who's been on walks with him before. And so I kind of wondered why we didn't start with his and Billy's first walk and instead, met up with the old friend.
I think that I don't know if that was a conscious decision I made. I wanted him to have a kind of a sidekick, kind of like a Watson to his Sherlock. And she seemed to be and she's based on a woman who was actually on the walk with me. And she, similarly to Billy in the book, she was a knitter and she was always knitting and she wore these sweaters that she knitted herself. And so I took that part from her. But no, again, it wasn't a conscious decision. I wanted them to have an established relationship. Now, having said that, after I did that, I did go back and write a short story about how they met,
Oh, goody.
and it's on my website, which is www.nicholasgeorgeauthor.com, and there's a short story about the walk on which they met. So I did address that at some point.
That is awesome. I love that. Yeah, and they do have just a really nice chemistry, and he's at a low point, and he needs that support, and it really works beautifully. But I'm definitely going to your website to read that short story. So Chase has just retired, and he's also just lost his husband,
Yeah.
which is why he needs this healing and this rejuvenation. How did you research the grief that went into the things that Chase is experiencing?
I didn't really research it. I mean, I've certainly known people who have lost their partners through the years and see how devastating that can be. And fortunately, I have not had to go through that myself. I mean, yes, I mean, I think as we go through life, we do lose people here and there, but the loss of a spouse or a partner is a very profound one. And so, in terms of research, no, I just know it can be very devastating. I know it can be very difficult to get beyond. I know we have a friend whose husband died. Oh, what was it? About 6 years ago, and I don't think she's still recovered from it yet. So, I mean, it's a hard thing to do, and that I didn't want to make the book real dark. I tried to keep a lightness to the book, and yet I did want to give Chase some motivation for coming on the walk, and in the process of the story, he does meet someone else who could possibly be the future romantic interest, and that subplot will continue in the next few books.
Yeah, because that Mike was a fun character. Um, but yeah, there's when he's alone and he's just like, okay, I'm in a funk and I can't get out of it. It's that awareness without but inability to do anything that just it really conveys that crushing sadness really well. And again, you don't wallow in it, and he is willing to, it's like, is that guy flirting with me? And I'm really excited for him when he kind of makes that realization that life can go on. So it's really beautifully done.
Well, thanks.
So uh one of my questions that I had was, we have this detective and he's kind of working with the English detectives. How do you think an actual, DCI would react to having an American detective along? I know you're not a detective.
Um, well, there's certain suspension of disbelief you have to allow for in these books because a lot of them involve amateur sleuths who
Mhm.
somehow insert themselves into a police investigation. And how likely is it that the police will be welcoming about it? Probably not. I don't
Oh.
know. Now, I do. Chase's background is as a police detective, so that does give him a certain degree of credibility there, rather than just being, a baker or something like
You're
that.
right.
But but yeah, I don't, I honestly don't know. But at the same time, you just accept the premise, move on. You'll enjoy the story. I was watching a, I was watching a TV series last night where the detective, the amateur sleuth in the story, is a caterer, and she's catering this event at which a murder occurs, and yet she also has very good detection instincts. So she inserts herself into this case, and that was one of the things I said. Really, this would probably never happen, but you just accept the premise, and you'll have a good time.
Yeah, I was watching a caterer one as well.
Might have
Mrs.
been the same one.
Mrs. Sidhu investigates or something.
That's fun, yes.
So charming. So just and yeah, it's like, would this happen? No. Do I want to watch every single episode and have the series go on forever? Yes, I do. So yeah. So uh let's go back to the character of Mike and a little bit of flirting. Is he based on anybody, or was that just
No, just came out of, just invented it. And, I've been asked how, and I think you probably get this question too, is just how do you think of your characters? How do you come up with your characters? And it's for me, I don't think about it too much. I want this character to perform this role, and right away I come up with their name, what they look like, a little bit about their background. I don't think about it too much. What I do think about quite a bit is the story arc of the book, and
Mhm.
who's going to be the murder victim, who's going to be the murderer, how is this going to work, what clues are you going to plant. That I do think out in very much detail, but I don't spend a lot of time on the characters. I just kind of throw them in there, and I may tweak them as I go through the writing process. But with Mike, no, I kind of just it just kind of happened, and I thought, okay, this is the guy who they might get together. I don't know.
Yeah, he's a fun character and a very likable character, and we want things to happen. When we read about Mike, I do the same thing. I start with my mystery. I have like all of my plot points and where everything is going to go, and then add the characters in. And
Yeah.
sometimes my first draft, my characters are like robots. I'm like, that is not a real person. Then I have to go back into the character development.
Well, first drafts are never that great. You just want to get the basics in there. That's right.
Right, absolutely. Okay, let's see. Okay, going back to England because we love it there, which actually was the name of our panel, by the way, for everybody. It was is why we love British mysteries because we really do. Um, what is your favorite part of England?
Oh, and I'm asked that a lot too because I really don't have one. I do. I can't remember if I mentioned this when we were together up at Left Coast Crime. Um, I'm very goal oriented, and I do have a goal of walking because I live in England. I have a goal of walking in every county of England at least 5 kilometers, at least 5 kilometers. And I I went online and said, well, how many counties are there in England?
That was my
And
next question.
it's not a real definable number because they define counties in a lot of different ways. So there's administrative counties, there's ceremonial counties. So more or less, there's about 39 of them. And so I set this goal for myself many years ago. And fortunately, I'm in a position where I can go back to England on a pretty much annual basis.
Mhm.
And I kind of knock these counties off my list. So there's 39 counties this year. I went back in February. So I'm up to number 30. I did number 34. So I've got 5 more to go.
Oh, that's amazing.
And they're all over. And I've walked all over England. And one thing that quickly became clear to me was that all of England is beautiful. Yes, there are some parts that aren't beautiful. You can get into some cities where it can get pretty dreary, but practically every county has a beautiful part to it that you can go walking out in the countryside or along the seashore. And so I don't have a favorite. I do have a couple that stand out because they're just so dramatic. I mean, for example, down in the south coast in Sussex, there's an area called the Seven Sisters where there are these hills with big chalk cliffs along the seaside, and they're very iconic, and you see them in a lot of photographs. But it's just a beautiful walk from Eastbourne toward Brighton on the south coast. So that was one that really stands out in my memory. Walking in the Lake District also was very, very beautiful. So those are two places that stand out, but I could name many others.
At least 34.
That's right.
Well, that sounds wonderful. Now I'm like adding things to my list of things I need to do the next time I go back. So we know we have a series of 3. After that, do you have ideas about expanding? I mean, clearly you could do 34 of them at this point. As long as you can find that alliteration for your text.
Exactly it. You have to find the alliteration. I was on a train in my last trip to England and was talking to these Brits near me on the train and about my book, and they were all excited. And they live in Yorkshire, and I said, well, if you can come up with something beginning with Y for Yorkshire, I can try doing it. I couldn't think of anything. So
that's gonna save that one for a bit later.
Yeah, so I've written the 3 to begin the series are in the works. The first one is out. The second one is in the pipeline, and it's going to be coming out in February of next year, as I said. And then the third one, I'm kind of fine tuning the draft of it right now. But beyond that, yeah, I would like to continue the series and maybe play a little bit with the premise and be a little bit more flexible with the premise. They're going to all be about walking in England, but maybe not all group walks, and there might be some deviation from the formula in the first few books. I don't know.
Awesome. Well, we'll look forward to all of those. So we have your website, nicholasgeorgeauthor.com. Yes. And how about social media? Are you present?
Oh yeah, I mean, I do have an Instagram account, Nicholas George, and I'm on Facebook. And I have a Amazon author page and a Goodreads author page, all the usual things that you got to do, And I try to keep my website fairly active. I try to post like once every couple of weeks or once every week. And depending on how busy I am, I try to do that. But yeah, there's usually something new on there.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Nicholas George, and A Deadly Walk in Devon. Fantastic first book to this wonderful series. Thank you, everybody, for watching Blackbird Writers Presents Author Interviews.
Thank you.